This wasn't supposed to happen. The US just made a move against Iran, and nobody knows what happens next. A ceasefire was supposed to end everything. Instead, it just got extended. Warships from both sides are now sitting in the Strait of Hormuz, fully armed, waiting. Thousands are already dead. And right now, this isn't a war anymore. It's a pause. And what happens next could decide whether this ends here or turns into something much bigger. This isn't another Middle East flare-up that burns out in a news cycle. What just happened between Washington and Tehran represents the most dangerous intersection of nuclear brinkmanship, energy choke points, and great power competition since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Except this time, there's no hotline, no framework, no shared understanding of what escalation even means. Just two countries that went from indirect talks to open warfare in 72 hours, and a ceasefire held together by a country, Pakistan, that's currently fighting its own war in Afghanistan. Let's establish what actually occurred, because the sequence matters. January 2026. Iran's government is massacring civilians in the streets. Protests that started in 2025 have spiraled into sustained anti-government resistance. The crackdown is brutal. Documented killings, mass arrests, the kind of internal repression that makes negotiations with the outside world nearly impossible, because the regime is fighting for survival at home. Simultaneously, Iran's nuclear program crosses a threshold. Enrichment levels push past the point where civilian energy use is the plausible explanation. The United States and Iran begin indirect negotiations in Oman, not face-to-face, through intermediaries. The talks produce nothing. No agreement, no de-escalation. Just two sides talking past each other while the U.S. begins moving military assets into the region at a scale not seen since the 2003 Iraq invasion. Carrier strike groups, bomber deployments, submarine repositioning. February arrives and the buildup is undeniable. Then, on February 28th, while negotiations are still technically ongoing, the United States and Israel launch Operation Epic Fury. The opening salvo hits over 1,000 sites across Iran in 24 hours. Military installations, government buildings, command and control nodes. And in a targeted strike that changes everything, Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei is killed, not wounded, dead, along with his daughter, his son-in-law, and 7 of Iran's top security officials. Decapitation strike doesn't begin to describe it. This was regime change attempted through precision bombing during active diplomacy. Iran's response was immediate and massive. Hundreds of missiles, thousands of drones, strikes on U.S. bases in Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, attacks across the Gulf targeting any facility that housed American forces, and then the move that turned a regional war into a global crisis. Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz. Not threatened closure, actually closed it. Closed 21 miles of water. 1/5 of the world's oil flows through it daily. In 2024, the strait averaged 20 million barrels per day. That's 20% of global petroleum consumption, moving through a channel you could swim across in good conditions. Within 48 hours of closure, tanker traffic dropped 70%. Within a week, it was near zero. Brent crude jumped past $120. The International Energy Agency released 400 million barrels from strategic reserves, the largest emergency release in its history. It barely moved the price. Then Trump escalated. April 12th, he declared a U.S. naval blockade of the strait. Not just Iranian ports, a full cordon. Any ship entering or leaving Iranian coastal areas would be intercepted. CENTCOM clarified the blockade wouldn't impede freedom of navigation for vessels going to non-Iranian ports, but the practical effect was a dual blockade. Iran restricting passage from one side, America enforcing a naval cordon from the other. The most critical energy choke point on Earth became a contested war zone with two nuclear powers controlling access. The cascading effects hit within days. Kuwait, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE collectively lost 6.7 million barrels per day of production by March 10th. Qatar Energy declared force majeure on all exports. But the crisis wasn't just oil. 70% of food imports into Gulf Cooperation Council states flow through Hormuz. By mid-March, grocery stores across the region were running empty. Retailers started airlifting staples. Consumer prices spiked 40 to 120%. Then, Iranian strikes hit desalination plants in Kuwait and Qatar. 99% of drinking water in those countries comes from desalination. The war shifted from energy disruption to potential humanitarian catastrophe in 3 weeks. Gas prices in the United States jumped over 50 cents per gallon. Europe faced energy shortages. Asian economies dependent on Gulf oil scrambled for alternatives that didn't exist at scale. This wasn't theoretical supply shock economics. This was the physical infrastructure of globalization breaking in real time. On April 8th, Pakistan brokered a 2-week ceasefire. Both sides agreed. The shooting stopped. But nothing else changed. The U.S. naval blockade remained in place. Iranian forces stayed positioned around the strait, and the fundamental disagreements that started the war were still unresolved. Here's where it gets complicated. Tehran's demands are clear. End of the U.S. blockade. Guarantee that fighting between Israel and Hezbollah won't resume. Those are the prerequisites for extending the ceasefire. Washington's demands are equally clear. Iran must end uranium enrichment and surrender its existing stockpile of enriched uranium. Trump has stated explicitly, the blockade stays until Iran agrees to negotiate on those terms. Neither side is blinking. Iran proposed a 10-point peace plan. The U.S. rejected it. Pakistan offered a 45-day phased ceasefire framework. Iran rejected it. Both countries keep saying they want peace while taking actions that make peace impossible. Trump initially said the ceasefire ends Wednesday and he wouldn't extend it. Then he reversed course, announcing an extension until Iran's leadership can present a unified proposal. But he also said the naval blockade continues regardless. That contradiction is the entire crisis in miniature. Extend the ceasefire, but maintain the blockade. Negotiate while enforcing terms that make negotiation pointless. Iran says it won't talk under the shadow of threats. America says threats are the only reason Iran is talking at all. The second round of peace talks in Pakistan was supposed to happen this week. Vice President J.D. Vance was set to lead the U.S. negotiating team. He canceled his trip. Iran's foreign ministry said they hadn't decided whether to attend, citing unacceptable U.S. actions, specifically the seizure of an Iranian container ship near Hormuz over the weekend. The maritime blockade Trump imposed 2 days after the first round of talks in Islamabad is now the primary obstacle to the second round happening at all. U.S. officials suspect a significant divide inside Iran's government. The negotiating team, led by Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf and Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, may want a deal. But the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the military hardliners who actually control Iran's missile forces and naval assets, may not. Nobody knows who can ultimately sign off on an agreement. Khamenei is dead. His son, Moshtaba, inherited the title of Supreme Leader, but he's never appeared on camera since the strikes. His first public statement was read by a television anchor while his photograph was displayed on screen. Nobody knows if he's injured. Nobody knows where he is. And nobody knows if he has the authority or the will to make concessions his father never would have accepted. What everyone does know is that Iran is devastated. 3.2 million people displaced. Decapitated military leadership, oil infrastructure under sustained attack. The country is fighting for survival. But survival doesn't always produce compromise. Sometimes it produces radicalization. Mojtaba's first statement said the Strait of Hormuz will remain closed, U.S. bases will continue to be attacked, and Iran will avenge its martyrs. That's not the language of negotiation. That's the language of a leader who inherited a war and can't afford to look weak while consolidating power. Trump threatened Tehran with problems like they've never seen before. Ghalibaf responded that Iran is prepared to reveal new cards on the battlefield. Both sides are locked in maximalist positions with no clear path to compromise. The ceasefire's extended, but extension isn't resolution, it's just delayed explosion. And the fuse is burning in 3 places simultaneously: the nuclear issue, the blockade, and the internal power struggle in Tehran that determines whether anyone can actually make a deal stick. Trump wants Iran's enriched uranium stockpile surrendered before lifting the blockade. Iran wants the blockade lifted before discussing the nuclear program. Classic sequencing deadlock. Both sides demanding the other move first. Both sides convinced that moving first equals losing. Meanwhile, the strait stays effectively closed. Not officially, not completely, but functionally. Insurance companies won't cover tankers. Shipping companies won't risk crews. A handful of vessels have made it through under Indian or Chinese flags, but the volume is a fraction of the normal traffic. 20 million barrels a day has dropped to maybe 2 or 3 million on a good day. The global economy is running on fumes and strategic reserves that were never designed to cover a months-long closure. Every day this continues, the math gets worse. The United States Strategic Petroleum Reserve is down to levels not seen since the 1980s after the emergency release. Europe's reserves are depleting. Asian countries are scrambling, and the alternatives, Venezuelan oil, Russian oil, Canadian tar sands, none of them scale fast enough to replace what Hormuz provided. The physical infrastructure to move that much oil through different routes doesn't exist. You can't just reroute 20 million barrels a day. The pipelines aren't there. The refineries aren't configured. The tanker fleet isn't positioned. This isn't a logistics problem you solve in weeks. It's a decade-long infrastructure gap that just became an immediate crisis. Brent crude at $120 is the current price. Analysts are modeling $150 if the strait stays closed into summer. At that price, economies don't just slow, they fracture. Inflation spikes. Central banks face impossible choices between fighting inflation and preventing recession. Developing countries that import oil face balance of payment crises. The cascading failures don't hit all at once. They compound, and every week the ceasefire holds without actual resolution is another week closer to the point where reserves run out and there's no buffer left. The situation represents a critical inflection point. Diplomacy could still work. There's an opening. Russia and China are pushing for a broader settlement. The UN Secretary General has called for immediate de-escalation. Pakistan, despite its own war in Afghanistan, is still trying to mediate. And Iran, for all its hardline rhetoric, is leading a country that can't sustain this fight indefinitely. 3.2 million displaced people need shelter. Oil infrastructure needs repair. The economy is collapsing. There's a deal to be made if both sides can step back from maximalist demands. But here's what makes this different from past Middle East crises. The players involved aren't just regional powers. This is the United States, a nuclear superpower directly at war with Iran, a threshold nuclear state over a choke point that controls 1/5 of global oil, while China and Russia watch with their own interests in keeping America bogged down and oil prices high. The incentives for outside powers to let this fester are significant. The risks of miscalculation are astronomical. and the mechanisms to prevent accident from becoming catastrophe barely exist. No hotline between Washington and Tehran. No deconfliction protocols in the Strait. No shared understanding of what constitutes an escalatory versus defensive action. Just two militaries operating in close proximity with the rules of engagement written in real time under pressure. One miscalculated drone strike. One overeager submarine commander. One misidentified radar contact. Any of those could restart full combat operations. And this time, there's no guarantee Pakistan or anyone else can broker another pause. The ceasefire extension Trump just announced isn't victory, it's postponement. The core issues, uranium enrichment, the blockade, Hezbollah, none of them are closer to resolution. The factions inside Iran's government are still fighting over who speaks for the country. The U.S. is still demanding total capitulation on the nuclear issue as the price for any sanctions relief. And the Strait is still closed enough to keep oil prices in crisis territory, while both sides figure out what happens next. The world is watching the Strait of Hormuz, because that's where the explosions are happening. But the real question isn't whether America and Iran can stop shooting at each other for another week. It's whether the fragile order that kept three nuclear powers from direct conflict in the Indian Ocean can survive what just got normalized. A U.S. submarine sank an Iranian warship in waters India considers its backyard, and the international response was a shrug. That's not a one-time anomaly. That's the new baseline. The choke points that move your fuel, your food, your entire supply chain are now contested battlegrounds, where the rules are being written in real time by whoever has the most firepower in the area that day. India's building a navy fast enough to matter, but not fast enough to control outcomes when Washington and Beijing decide those same waters are worth fighting over. The ceasefire Trump just extended doesn't resolve anything. It just pauses the part of the crisis people can see on the news, the part unfolding beneath the surface, the submarine mapping missions, the sensor networks, the strategic positioning for the conflict everyone knows is coming. That never stopped, and it's happening in an ocean that has India's name on it, but no institutional framework to prevent miscalculation from becoming catastrophe. The next 5 years won't just determine who controls the Indian Ocean. They'll determine whether control is even possible anymore, or whether we've entered an era where the choke points that run civilization are permanently contested, and one bad day away from shutting down. That's not the future we're building toward. That's the present we're already living in.